What if I told you that a 20-year-old king would go on to conquer more land in just 13 years than the mighty Roman Empire managed in 5 centuries? That he would remain undefeated in every battle he fought, forge an empire that stretched across 3 continents, and die at the height of his power, leaving behind a legacy so profound it would alter the course of history itself. This is the astonishing tale of Alexander the Great, the young Macedonian prince who rose to become the ruler of the known world. Picture this. It's 336 BCE, and a young Alexander receives devastating news. His father, King Philip II of Macedonia, has been assassinated at his own daughter's wedding. At just 20 years old, Alexander finds himself thrust onto the throne of a kingdom surrounded by enemies. The Greek city-states are already plotting rebellion, thinking this boy king will be easy prey. They couldn't have been more wrong. Within 2 years, Alexander had not only secured his throne, but crushed every rebellion with ruthless efficiency. When the city of Thebes dared to revolt, Alexander made an example that sent shockwaves across the Greek world. He razed the entire city to the ground, selling its 30,000 inhabitants into slavery. The message was clear. The young lion had claws. But Alexander's ambitions stretched far beyond Greece. He had inherited not just a throne, but a dream from his father, the conquest of Persia. In 334 BCE, with an army of 35,000 men, Alexander crossed the Hellespont into Asia Minor, beginning what would become history's most audacious military campaign. The Persian Empire was the superpower of its day, controlling territory from India to Egypt, with seemingly unlimited resources and manpower. Its king, Darius III, commanded armies that dwarfed Alexander's forces. Any rational military strategist would have called Alexander's mission impossible. But Alexander wasn't rational, he was obsessed. At the Battle of Granicus River, Alexander faced his first major test against Persian forces. Leading from the front, as he always would, Alexander charged directly into the enemy lines. A Persian nobleman struck Alexander's helmet with such force that it split in 2. Another Persian raised his sword to deliver the killing blow, but Alexander's friend Cletus severed the attacker's arm, saving the future conqueror's life. This near-death experience would be just the first of many. The victory at Granicus opened the doors to Asia Minor, but it was merely the appetizer. The main course would be the Battle of Issus in 333 BCE, where Alexander would face Darius III himself. The Persian king commanded over 100,000 troops, nearly 3 times Alexander's army. The odds were stacked impossibly against the young Macedonian. But Alexander had something Darius lacked: revolutionary military tactics. While Persian armies relied on overwhelming numbers and traditional formations, Alexander had perfected the use of the Macedonian phalanx, a nearly impenetrable wall of 18-foot spears, combined with devastating cavalry charges. More importantly, he had cultivated something invaluable: absolute loyalty from his men. At Issus, Alexander again led the charge personally, targeting Darius himself. The sight of the young king charging straight toward him, sword raised, proved too much for the Persian emperor. Darius fled the battlefield, abandoning his army, his family, and his dignity. Alexander had defeated the most powerful empire in the world, but he was far from finished. The conquest of Egypt followed, where Alexander was welcomed as a liberator from Persian rule. The priests of Amun declared him the son of a god, a title that would fuel his growing megalomania. Here he founded Alexandria, the first of many cities that would bear his name and serve as centers of Greek culture throughout his empire. But the jewel of Alexander's conquests was still to come. After regrouping, Darius made one final attempt to stop the Macedonian juggernaut. At Gaugamela in 331 BCE, he assembled the largest army in Persian history, over 250,000 men, including war elephants and scythed chariots. This would be the decisive battle for control of the Persian Empire. Alexander's tactical genius reached its peak at Gaugamela. He created a gap in the Persian lines through a series of feints and charges, then personally led his elite companion cavalry through the breach, again targeting Darius directly. For the second time, the sight of Alexander bearing down on him caused the Persian king to flee, effectively ending the Achaemenid Empire that had ruled for over 2 centuries. With Persia conquered, most generals would have consolidated their gains, not Alexander. His hunger for conquest had only grown stronger. He pushed his army further east into the unknown lands beyond the Hindu Kush mountains. In modern-day Afghanistan and Pakistan, he faced new challenges: guerrilla warfare, treacherous terrain, and war elephants that terrified his horses. The Battle of Hydaspes against King Porus showcased Alexander's adaptability. Facing war elephants for the first time in a major battle, Alexander developed new tactics, using his archers to target the elephant drivers and his cavalry to attack from the flanks. Even after defeating Porus, Alexander was so impressed by the Indian king's courage that he not only spared his life but made him an ally. But Alexander's greatest enemy wasn't any army, it was his own ambition. After 8 years of constant warfare, his soldiers were exhausted, homesick, and increasingly resentful of their king's adoption of Persian customs. At the Hyphasis River in India, they finally said no. For the first time in his life, Alexander was forced to turn back. The return journey proved as perilous as any battle. Crossing the Gedrosian desert, Alexander lost more men to thirst and heat than he had to enemy swords. Yet even in retreat, he continued founding cities and planning new conquests. By the time he reached Babylon in 323 BCE, he was already planning campaigns in Arabia and the Western Mediterranean. But fate had other plans. After a banquet in Babylon, Alexander fell ill with a mysterious fever. Some historians suggest poison, others point to malaria or typhoid. For 10 days, the man who had conquered the world lay dying. When asked who should inherit his empire, he reportedly whispered, "To the strongest." Alexander died on June 10, 323 BCE, just shy of his 33rd birthday. In less than 13 years, he had created an empire stretching from Greece to India, covering over 2 million square miles. He had never lost a battle, founded over 20 cities, and changed the course of human history. But perhaps Alexander's greatest conquest wasn't territorial, it was cultural. His empire became the bridge between East and West, spreading Greek culture, philosophy and learning throughout the known world. The Hellenistic period that followed would see unprecedented advances in science, mathematics, and art. Alexander's legacy endures not just in the cities that bear his name, but in the very concept of what's possible when ambition meets opportunity. He proved that with enough determination, tactical brilliance, and sheer audacity, even the impossible becomes inevitable. From Macedonia to India, Alexander the Great didn't just conquer territories, he conquered the imagination of humanity itself.